As Lisa handed him the receipt, her eyes were now downcast, avoiding his gaze. James noticed the slight tremble in her hands. She knew she had messed up, but would she be able to confront it? Would she see him as the man he truly was, beyond the assumptions and stereotypes? Or was this just another reminder that no matter how high he climbed, some people would always see him through the lens of their own biases? The clock ticked louder in the otherwise quiet room. James stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of the moment settle in. What was he going to do next? What would happen when the truth truly hit? Just as James was about to turn and walk away, something unexpected happened. A man in a suit, clearly a bank manager, approached the counter, his expression stiff. James could feel the shift in the air as the man came closer, but it was the way Lisa's eyes widened in surprise that caught his attention. The manager stopped beside Lisa, briefly glancing at James, then focusing on her. "Lisa, we need to talk about that transaction," he said, his voice low but firm. "I just checked the system. I'm afraid you've made a mistake with a high-profile client." The words hit James like a punch to the gut. High-profile client. So now they were going to acknowledge his success. Or was this just another layer of the same treatment, where he was only valuable when he fit the image they wanted? Lisa's face went pale. She was clearly caught off guard. "I didn't mean," she stammered, but the manager interrupted. "You need to understand the importance of recognizing the clients we serve," the manager said sharply, directing his tone more toward Lisa than James. "This could cost us if it happens again." James couldn't believe what he was hearing. It wasn't enough that Lisa had wrongly judged him. Now the bank manager was making it clear that the system had been set up to penalize her for something that wasn't even her fault. He had been seen as just another ordinary customer until the moment they realized who he was, and now Lisa was the one being treated like the problem. The silence in the bank felt suffocating as the manager turned away, his footsteps echoing on the marble floor. Lisa looked up at James, her expression a mixture of guilt and helplessness. For a brief moment, their eyes locked, two people caught in a situation neither had truly expected. But the tension didn't end there. James was left standing there, questioning everything. Was this what happened when someone who didn't fit the mold made it to the top? Was it all a game of appearances, where only certain people mattered once the numbers were right? And more importantly, how would he confront the systemic bias that had just been laid bare in front of him? The stakes had just been raised, but how far would he be willing to push back? James felt his anger rise as he watched the manager walk away, leaving Lisa standing there, still trembling. For a moment, the silence in the bank was deafening. He could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on him, waiting for what he would do next. But this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the bigger picture, the bias, the assumptions, and the way people like Lisa were caught in a system that didn't care about anything beyond the surface. James took a deep breath, his pulse pounding in his ears. He wasn't going to let this moment pass without doing something. He turned to face Lisa, her face now flushed with embarrassment, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "Listen," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I know what you did, and I know why you did it, but I also know that's not the real you." Lisa looked up, surprised by his words. He continued, "You made a mistake, and you'll learn from it. We all do. But that's not what defines you. What defines you is what happens next." Lisa's eyes widened, as if she hadn't expected him to say that. He could see the conflict in her eyes, the shame mixed with something else, relief maybe. For a brief moment, it felt like they were on the same side, caught in the same web of assumptions, both trying to make sense of a system that didn't care about their humanity. But just as the moment seemed to settle, there was a sudden interruption. The manager reappeared, his face tight with frustration. He had returned not to apologize, but to make one final statement. "Mr. Carter," he said, his tone clipped, "I'd like to personally ensure this doesn't affect your banking experience. Perhaps we can arrange a private consultation to discuss the matter further." "You came back," he said softly. Emma didn't waste time. "Who are you?" she demanded. "What's going on? That man in the suit, what does he know about you?" The homeless man sighed, as if the weight of his past had finally caught up to him. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you," he said, "but I have no choice now." He looked around, ensuring no one else was nearby, then spoke in a hushed tone. "I was once a powerful man, someone in a position to change things, to help people. But I crossed the wrong people. They made me disappear, erased everything about me, turned me into this." He motioned to his ragged clothes. "They wanted to silence me, so they gave me nothing but this life. I've been living in hiding, waiting for the right moment to make things right. And you've been caught in the middle of it." Emma's head spun. It was all too much. She wanted to believe him, but the pieces didn't fit. "That man in the suit," he continued, "he's one of them. They're watching, waiting. And now that you know, they'll come for you too." Just as Emma opened her mouth to respond, the sound of footsteps approached from behind. Before she could react, the man in the suit stepped into view again, a sinister smile creeping across his face. "You should have stayed out of this, Emma," he said, his voice cold. "Now, you'll never be able to walk away." In a flash, the homeless man stepped forward, pushing Emma aside and standing between her and the stranger. For the first time, his eyes were filled with a fire she hadn't seen before. "I won't let you hurt her," he growled, his voice low and steady. But just as the tension in the air reached its peak, something unexpected happened. The man in the suit paused, his eyes flicking toward the street behind Emma. A car screeched to a halt. Dozens of men in black suits emerged, surrounding them. The homeless man's face went pale. "It's too late," he whispered, his voice breaking. In a sudden, shocking turn, the man in the suit turned on his heels, signaling his team to retreat. "We'll be back for you," he called over his shoulder, before disappearing into the darkness. Emma stood frozen, her mind reeling. What had just happened? She turned to the homeless man, but he was gone, vanishing into the shadows, leaving behind only the haunting echo of his words. As Emma stood there, trying to process everything, she realized one thing: this was far from over. The truth had only just begun to unravel, and the danger wasn't over, it was just beginning. Emma stood in the quiet aftermath, her mind still spinning from the chaos. The homeless man was gone, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. But one thing was clear: she was no longer just a waitress. Her life had been touched by something far bigger than she ever imagined. She returned to the diner, her thoughts heavy but clear. The danger wasn't over, but for now, she knew what she had to do: stay strong, stay aware, and uncover the full truth of what had been hidden from her. Whatever the man's past was, whatever his connection to the powerful figures who sought to control him, she couldn't back down now. The world wasn't always what it seemed, and Emma, having stepped into a new world of secrets and intrigue, was determined to find the truth. The man may have disappeared, but his story was far from over.